Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Form 18. Workers' compensation cases are very forms driven, meaning anything that really happens, a form needs to be filed with the North Carolina Industrial Commission to tell the judges what's happening, what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. The Form 18, which I'll show you in a second, is the employees, which is the injured worker, first report of injury. There are a couple time limits associated with filing the form. One is 30 days, one is 2 years. There's differences between both of them. I would suggest you consult with a lawyer, preferably a board certified specialist, if you have any questions about those two timelines. I can tell you though, the closer in time you file the Form 18 to your actual injury, the better. The less red flags the insurance company is going to see, and the more notice that everyone will have. In addition, before we look at the form, the injured employee is required to fill out and file the Form 18. Don't rely on your employer. Don't just think that everyone knows about your claim and therefore you don't need to file anything. Form 18 is going to be required, and you, as the injured employee, are required to file it. So let's get into the form and what it looks like. First things first, let's figure out how to actually get the Form 18. And you can do it in a couple of different ways. One of the ways is right under my talking head. I'm going to insert a link that will take you directly to where I'm going to show you how to get now, but it will take you directly to the Form 18. The easiest way for most folks is just to go to Google or whatever search engine you use and type in the words North Carolina Industrial Commission. Remember, those are the judges up in Raleigh and the administrative body that handle all workers' compensation cases. And once you do that, this is what comes up, at least for me. And you'll notice here, there's a forms sublink. You can click right on that and it'll take you to the forms page. If for whatever reason you don't have the forms sublink, then just click on the main Industrial Commission web and go over here to links. And then you'll see a bunch of stuff under links, and one of which is forms. Go there. It takes you to the same place. And you can go into any of these that you want. You're the claimant as the injured employee, but the easiest way is just to come down and click on this. It says Form 18. And that's what comes up. This is the Form 18. So let's look at both pages of the Form 18 first before we go into any of the specific sections. So you notice the Form 18 is entitled Notice of Accident to Employer and Claim of Employee Representative or Dependent. Again, it's just the employee's first notice of accident. You're telling the judge and your employer what happened, when it happened, how it happened, and what you heard. There's all the sections of the first page of the Form 18, and that's the information you're going to be filling out as the injured worker. The second page is more of just a frequently asked questions. I don't pay too much attention to the second page, but you can read it if you like. A couple other points on here is this area right here. The most important for you, if you don't have counsel, is this helpline. Anytime you need help filling out the form or you need information to fill out the form, you can call that helpline right there. And that's the Industrial Commission in Raleigh, and they will help. And then there's also some instructions on how to file the Form 18, which we'll get into in a second. But let's go to the top. You are generally not going to have this information right here. IC file, employer code, and carrier code. The reason is there's probably IC stands for Industrial Commission, and there's probably not an IC file number. That's your claim number, and that will generally be initiated by the courts when you file this Form 18. So you're just going to have to leave that blank. There may be an IC file number if your employer filed a form first, but generally there's not one. So leave that blank. You're not going to know the employer code, which is here. You're likely not going to know the carrier code, which is here. Even I, as a lawyer, generally do not fill those out. Let's move down to the next section, which is the section that identifies you and your employer and the insurance company. Right here, this is you put your name, your address, your home telephone number. Leave the work number blank. I don't know why that's on the form. I think it's just old. Here's your social security number right here. You have to tell the courts whether you're a male or female, and there's your date of birth. You fill that in. And then you come up here and you fill in your employer's name and your employer's telephone number and your employer's address. And here comes the tricky part. Insurance carrier, that's the insurance company, the workers' compensation insurance company for your employer. You may not know that. Yeah, you can ask your employer, and oftentimes they'll give you the information. Then you can fill this stuff in right here. But sometimes your employer won't give it to you for whatever reason. You can call this helpline down here and tell them your name and your date of birth, what your employer's name is, and on what date you were hurt. And the insurance company can give you the information about, excuse me, the industrial commission can give you the information about who the insurance company is, probably even give you a policy number, address, city, state, zip, all that. But this stuff needs to be filled in. Unlike the stuff at the top here, the insurance company information has to be filled in. So if you need help getting it and you don't have a lawyer, because I, as a lawyer, have ways to get that information that you, as a what's called a pro se litigant or someone without a lawyer, may not. So once you've filled out the information about who you are and who they are, then you come down. And one point here, make sure when you're naming your employer, you get the exact legal name. Because some people think, well, I work for Bob's Plumbing. Bob's Plumbing isn't really Bob's Plumbing. It could be like ABC Plumbing, LLC. Oftentimes you can look on the top left-hand corner of the check that you're paid from, and it'll give you the name of your employer. But if you get the employer name right, the workers' compensation judges up in Raleigh, the Industrial Commission may have difficulty locating who the insurance company is. Okay, now we move down into what happened and where it happened, which is all of this information right here. Um, uh, the time of the injury, not as important, but get as close as you can. The date of the injury here is very important. Don't get it wrong. City and county is just the city where you were hurt and the county where you were hurt. If it's outside of North Carolina, just put the city and county and the state of where you've hurt here. Um, Body parts right here. Get these right. If you mainly just hurt your back, but you also hurt your hand and your finger and you knocked your head, list everything. Even if you think it was minimal, list everything. You can always remove things later in the claim. It's much harder to add body parts later in the claim. And in this section right here, you write what happened. Slipped and fell on water, or I tripped down the stairs, or whatever the injury was, you put it in here. And then you come down to what your occupation was when you were injured. Just write it out. I was a plumber, or whatever you were. The nature of your employer's business, same thing. Just write it out. If you have received medical treatment, whether it be paid by workers' comp or your employer or not, if you've received medical treatment, then you check yes. If not, then you check no. And then this one's not as important either, but if you've missed some work, the cause of the injury, write it down here, how many days you've missed from work. Obviously, you may miss work in the future, and you can't just keep amending this form. But as of the date that you filed it, the number of days that you've missed. And then you come down to the wage section, and that's just exactly what it sounds like. How much on an average week before taxes, before they took anything out of your check, how much were you making? And then the next one here is the number of days or number of hours you work per day and the number of days you work per week. Again, you're not bound by those three inputs on the Form 18, but just get as close as you can. And then the last part is down here where you sign. You print your name, you print your email address. I assume everyone has one these days. And you put your telephone number. And then you put your physical address here and the date you completed the form. Once you get this form filled out, you have to do a couple of things with it. One, you have to send it to the North Carolina Industrial Commission. And two, you have to send it to your employer. And you're going to keep a copy of yourself. So I guess that's three things. You can mail it to the North Carolina Industrial Commission, but they prefer it to get it electronically. I, as the lawyer, will use this e-file site, but you won't be able to do that because you don't have a username. You can email it to this email address right there, forms@ic.nc.gov, or you can also mail it to the claims section, which is right here. Whichever is easier for you. I can tell you email is quicker and the better way to send it. US mail, sometimes it gets lost, takes a while to get processed and scanned in. Again, if you need help with filling out the form or any of the contents of the form, there's the helpline. So again, in addition to sending it to the Industrial Commission, you have to give a copy to your employer. I would suggest doing that where you can prove it, like email. You can hand it to someone at your employer, but then it's a he said, she said about whether you actually turned this thing in or not. So the more you can do things where you have evidence that you did it, the better. So it's a pretty straightforward form. You don't need a lawyer to fill one of these out. You can just go by um, the tutorial that you're watching now. However, if what you put on the form can stick with you, specifically with regard to your date of accident here, your body parts injured here, and the description of the accident here. And if you get it wrong, sometimes it's difficult to undo. So be sure those, at least those three parts are correct and straightforward. Okay, that's it for the Form 18. If you have any questions, consult a lawyer, preferably a board certified specialist. And thanks for watching.